how do we make sure that the inequalities of the past are appropriately redressed, such that those rights that are enshrined in the Constitution, the right to equality, Section 9 of the Constitution, blah, blah, and all of those, are lived rights.
On to this story now. Statistician General Risenga Maluleke recently released the Inequality Trends Report for South Africa, which found that the country remains one of the most unequal nations in the world.
Inequality in South Africa, it seems to be growing. The situation does not seem to get better.
Inequality has increased quite significantly since 1995.
It's quite clear inequality still exists, and black South Africans are the highest risk of poverty.
From Feesless Fall to Zhuaging, there are countless examples of South Africans using the internet in exciting ways that changes lives. The question is, can we use the internet to do battle with one of the greatest challenges of our generation, inequality?
The problem of inequality for me, I think, is not the internet's thing to fix.
The internet is the greatest invention.
The internet is growing exponentially. When we look at the various segments, the internet is the fastest growing segment.
A new undersea broadband cable is to be built around the African continent and the Middle East.
And help us to advance the priorities that we have set for ourselves.
An inability to access data is so completely goes right into the heart of aggravating and entrenching existing inequalities.
How do I feel about the division between the poor and the rich in South Africa? I feel like the rich are more given an opportunity. They've got more chances in life than the poor. They've got more opportunities than the poor, and I feel like it's not fair.
To counter the growing pessimism in the country, Jared Petzer has created a Facebook group titled #I'mStaying.
How do you inspire 1.1 million South Africans to believe in a message of hope and togetherness in the face of a history that kept us apart? Meet Jared Petzer, who uses social media as a tool to do just that.
So Jared, I'd just like to chat to you a little bit about your cause.
Sure. So I think in 2019 we really started to feel a build-up of toxicity in South Africa regarding race, regarding politics, economic situation in the country, and certainly there were a lot of people that were leaving out of fear and concern. And I think certainly I was a contributing factor to a lot of it because I was doing what everybody else was doing and perpetuating more of this toxicity by sharing articles and constantly talking about the negative state of South Africa. And so what I wanted to do was just change my personal view and start to concentrate more on positive thinking, start to try and align my emotional state with that, and then try to do some sort of an action towards bringing about something more positive. And I can't control South Africa, but I can control myself and my immediate environment. And that's really what gave birth to #I'mStaying. If you look at the structure of it, it was all about good thoughts, good words, and good deeds, and then about celebrating the things that we like in South Africa. And obviously it just took off. When we built up the #I'mStaying group, there were a number of initiatives that were raised by our memberships, by people in our group. And when we started investigating whether people would support these initiatives, we found that there was a huge amount of support. And I think to date we've raised over 1.5 million rand for the #VouchForYou campaign, and I think that's sitting on close to 900,000 rand now. I mean, and that just spoke to the heart of people wanting to be able to reach out and assist South Africans, and it was people from every race, from every demographic they came across to support this initiative so that we could feed our people. What I love about the platform is that a number of people have launched their own initiatives, like a challenge, for example, where they would go and tip a waiter, and that caught fire on the platform, and then all of a sudden people rushed out and they started giving their waiters 100% tip of the bill. Another one that happened was, which was amazing, was somebody went and paid for someone's lay-by. That got so much momentum eventually that there were no more lay-bys available. Now we're talking about parents that were trying to buy school clothes for their kids, stationery for their kids, school shoes and that sort of thing. So it really, I mean, the community, the hashtag I'm Staying community, really behind that, and even there's a lot of power in what we can do as a community, you know, if we channel our energy in the right place.
Jared and his community refused to allow political debate of any kind to preserve the optimism in the group.
How does Staying avoid perpetuating the idea of the white superhero? Because, for instance, with the images that are on social media, I think about like NPOs that like black little children and these privileged people helping and donating. And
yeah, I don't think we should be judging people that are trying to do their piece to help, and I don't think it matters what color they are. I think if we're gonna put color in front of everything that we do and assume that because you are the wrong color you shouldn't be helping, well, I think there's a fundamental flaw in that thinking, and we need to adjust that immediately. Hashtag I'm staying. So I don't have a visa, I don't have a passport, I don't have money to be able to just up and leave. The hashtag I'm staying was never about people wanting to stay or go. It was the fact that we are staying in South Africa, we don't have a choice, we're here, so now what are we going to do about that? And it brings us back to that point of action again. So I think we need to move away from this thinking that hashtag I'm staying is a white-based community. We need to move away from this thinking that hashtag I'm staying is about the privileged that have the option to go and to stay, because that is, it's flawed in its thinking. Fundamentally it's flawed in its thinking, and before we start throwing color into the mix, let's throw the fact into the mix that we are all South Africans, and I think everything else is secondary to that.
It's not long before the politics begin to emerge. South Africa's wealth disparity shows itself everywhere, including in the Facebook group, where the gifters remain largely white and historically privileged, and those in need predominantly black.
We are being told that race does not count. Now, it is a myth. Race does count in South Africa, and is going to count for quite a long time. Most people make the mistake that no, we don't have any racism. Apartheid is gone, and therefore we have got equal opportunities to resources. It's a myth.
Jared's vision is consistent with the Rainbow Nation dream of 1994. But 26 years later, we've learned that ignoring systemic issues can create a fiction that suppresses an understanding of our reality.
The honest assessment of the levels of poverty and inequality is essential, and for too long in this country we've been trying to reconstruct a story that doesn't really bear existence with the research. So I think we need to look at what the context is, and I think if we look at the causes of inequality, which is also significant, we have historical drivers that were linked to apartheid and the dispossession of people's access to assets.
Because of apartheid laws that defined access to resources on a racial basis, white people had a head start. And that is the inequality that our country fought to end.
I don't want to sound like political, but I do think, and I do see in our country that the blacks and the poor, there's still a difference between them. The whites are more rich than the blacks as it is in our country.
The internet is going to be the leveler. Part of the ways in which structural inequalities were kept in place was because people had monopoly. But now, you can't hide things from me because you monopolize the instruments. It is going to make it possible for Oppenheimer, with all his riches, to access the same information as poor me. It's making the world more equal.
The painful reality, statistically, is that our country today still resembles apartheid South Africa. Black South Africans, especially black women, face this harsh reality the hardest. Every day, South Africans face a 35% unemployment rate. And every morning, we battle the loss of humanity that comes with high poverty rates. In 2016, Soweto-born activist and entrepreneur Mzuzukile Soni started Brown Sense, an online marketplace that helps black entrepreneurs to participate in a national economy that historically excluded them. The community upskills its members with business management and fundraising hacks to change socio-economic inequalities by circulating much-needed capital in the black community.
Brown Sense started in 2016, Jen, as a Facebook group. How it came about was I was at a point where I was fed up with the status quo. At the time, the trigger was Penny Sparrow. So the two came back to back. And they were both followed by outrage, I think mostly on Twitter. And my thought process then was, how long are we going to, keep up with such? Are we always going to be triggered and then take it to the social media space? Or are we ever going to do anything that's meaningful? And I had an idea, I think about 4 or 5 years before starting Brown Sense, to come up with a directory for township-based businesses. Not just a directory where, anyone and everyone gets onboarded, but a directory of businesses that you would never think to find in a township. But also to show good stories about us to our people.
Brown Sense is one of many online tools, such as Amandla.mobi, that are grounded in subverting the status quo.
A local entrepreneur who's harnessing the power of cell phones is being recognized in the US. It's an advocacy platform where you run campaigns, especially for certain issues, especially around black women or low-income women, as well as highlighting some of those problems such as gender-based violence.
And we're saying that technology can actually be used to build the world we want to see, to bring people together in ways that fundamentally shift how power is organized. Instead of us taking technology and reproducing existing inequalities, we can use it to actually fight back and push back against these inequalities.
I never fail to be impressed when I read about how people in the rural areas have used the telephone, to send money, to send money to their relatives who may be thousands of kilometers. Why? Because there is easier access to the internet.
Most of abantu abasebenzi and umsebenzi vela wukho, and most of abantu benza umsebenzi and they get to sell it through internet. So if lento le ngaba into accessible kubona, I don't think they bangakhala that much about being unemployed.
We black people have to work. Some of people, I wouldn't say which race, they just got things already there. For us to work, we need the internet, as we were talking about the internet, and establishing ourselves more in order to cover up the score.
I feel like the internet is going to be there as a facilitator to make things better.
Most of the times we don't go to school for like mastering songs. I need to go to YouTube so that I can see tutorials.
They actually help the public, whereby our education infrastructure will be more easier to actually to be accessed.
For instance, a library also has things that are on internet. Now internet also has isn't the same what day.
I think the internet should be a basic human right. Why? Because at the end of the day, I feel it's simplifying my life. Why not make it simpler for someone else?
For ordinary South Africans, reaching online tools for basic needs such as education is still a distant reality because of limited internet access. Amos Sitole, an entrepreneur from Eguwelini, decided to do something about it.
I started my business in 2012. I saw the gap in my community. I remember coming here in Vilaliza. So when I get here, there was no internet cafe around. I thought I think it's time for me to start my own thing. I managed to buy 2 computers only. And I had a phone, which is a BlackBerry. Then I bought him a one room shack. That's how I started, with 2 computers, a BlackBerry and a laptop. I think it's internet ibalulekile kakhulu for umphakathi. The communications, I think it's important. To have an internet cafe in a place like this, it makes it easier for those who wants to use it, even though they don't have enough, but laba bafuna ukuyisebenzisa kwenza ukuthi beze bazofuna ukuyisebenzisa.
What we know the internet can do versus how we're able to access and use the internet, I think is really where a lot of our disconnect comes in.
South African cellular network providers are notorious for inflating data costs. This is another barrier that denies online opportunities to communities that need it most.
Well, the Competition Commission has found data prices to be disproportionately high in South Africa.
South Africa has the most expensive cellular data. Studies have shown that since 2014, the price of 1 gig of data has flatlined.
Data costs, they're expensive.
Data for me, I think they're expensive.
It's expensive. The cost of data is very expensive.
It's not only about the price of data, right? It is also that there is a price discrimination, which means that lower income consumers are paying so much more for data. This is unthinkable. In a country as unequal as ours already, this deepens and entrenches further inequalities.
I use it for downloading information. I use it for even applying for employment.
School kids used to come for applying NSFAS, varsity applications.
Internet access has become such an integral part of our day-to-day lives, right? Whether registering a business, whether getting services from government as well, whether applying for school services, among many, many other things.
It's worse for me now because I have to now, because since I'm unemployed, I have to eat there from day to night. So saving for data and something else doesn't make sense. So that is why I'm saying I think it should be free.
Easier for umphakathi.
The data must fall and all the rest of it. Movement, there's not a lot of movement. I can't sit back here and look and say a lot has changed over these couple of years, or even when this conversation started. I can't look and say that the prices have gone down, etc., etc.
Make this thing available. You know, there is no need for us to reinvent the wheel and say we need to make access to the internet a human right. When we have got clauses in the Constitution that says there's a right that entrenches person's right, access to information, access to this, access to education, this, that, how better than making internet easily available?
internet helps more people express their truth about the South African experience.
I'm finding digital or content is able to house real life either protest or real life activism, I suppose, or real life, I think, coming together in times of trial.
To reflect the zeitgeist.
I think content is documenting it for one. I think it's giving it reach. Two, I think it's also giving it an extra platform. It's creating digital activism as well.
Because through the internet, one video or just one hashtag can spark a revolution.
It's almost giving digital and online people the ability to also join in on the physical movement that is happening at that time. And we've seen it. We've seen it with Fees Must Fall. We saw a lot of the young people saying, media entities are not capturing what we're saying. You guys are not narrating this thing right. So this is actually what is going on. So I think that's the power of digital and social media, is the ability for people, again, it's that ownership of being able to be like, no, we're not going to let anybody tell the story. We're going to tell it ourselves. And we will tell it to the world.
Social media and online connectivity is huge. It has a huge role to play in terms of being able to address social ills or social challenges that you might have.
I think it's important. That's how the internet is communication between worlds.
But a silent barrier to freedom of expression online remains hidden in plain sight: language.
We shouldn't be holding this kind of, however universalized English has become.
In South Africa, if you really want to be able to connect with South Africans across the board, it's so important for us to start learning how to communicate in other languages. I think it really is it's really going to help us sort of move things along, and we're seeing a lot more of it, and the impact of it, and how that allows people to just sort of connect instantaneously. You know, once you're able to speak in somebody else's language, it helps you connect. It's a very powerful connector.
South Africans are a resilient people. Our ability to overcome the past proves it. Today, we still face the legacy of apartheid, but we are proving resilient in the face of that too. The internet is a knowledge resource that we can use to look back in time and look ahead with previously excluded truths. The internet might not end inequality, but it can bring us closer to revealing the truth. And that's a good start.
Set my people free by giving them free access to the internet. Nothing can be more in line with the promise of our democracy for a free society. Data must fall.